mynews.studio.
A dip in global CO₂ emissions and a treaty for the high seas. Are we at a turning point or just catching our breath?
Today is December 20th, 2025. For the first time, the United Nations says global greenhouse gas emissions are set to fall 10% below 1990 levels by 2035. That's not a small shift, especially with China, the world's largest emitter, pledging a 7 to 10% cut in that same window. But what's actually driving this decline? Is this a hard guarantee or more of a best-case scenario?
The big factors are the rapid expansion of clean energy, mainly wind and solar, and stronger national policies. China's commitment really stands out, and emerging economies are leading in new solar installations. Africa, for example, is seeing what some are calling a solar takeoff. But, and this is important, the UN's projection depends on every country following through on its pledges. There's a lot of uncertainty. Do you think these policies are robust enough?
That's the question, isn't it? The 10% decline is a scenario, not a guarantee. Implementation is everything. And if you look at the targets needed to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, emissions would need to fall by 55 to 60% by 2035. Even a 2-degree pathway means a 35% cut. Are we moving fast enough or just slowing the climb?
We're not moving fast enough. This is a turning point, but it's not a victory lap. The pace is still dangerously slow, especially for the climate's most vulnerable. But there's another side to this: the ocean. The world just ratified its first legally binding treaty to protect the high seas, covering 2/3 of the world's ocean. French Polynesia has even created the largest marine protected area so far. How do you see this impacting ocean health and global fisheries?
The treaty sets up marine protected areas and requires environmental impact assessments for activities in the high seas. Enforcement, though, comes down to flag states and regional bodies, so it isn't perfect. Still, it's a major step. Oceans absorb a huge amount of carbon and support billions of people. Do you think this will help preserve that carbon sink function?
If enforced, yes. Protecting biodiversity leads to healthier ecosystems, which means better carbon storage. But enforcement is tricky, especially in international waters. There are also concerns about capacity and political will. Still, having a legal framework is a leap forward.
Let's circle back to China and emerging economies. China's role is clear, but what about countries like India or those in Africa? What challenges do they face in scaling renewables?
The challenges are real. Things like grid stability, financing, and making sure the transition is just for workers and communities. But the momentum is there. These economies are attracting investment and setting records for new solar installations. They need more support to overcome barriers, but their leadership is now visible.
So we have a global emissions dip, a new high seas treaty, and major renewable expansion led by emerging economies. But the gap between pledges and the pace needed to hit 1.5 or 2 degrees is still huge. Is this enough to change the narrative on climate action?
It changes the narrative from nothing is working to things are starting to work. But it's not enough. It shows that international cooperation and clean technology can move the needle. The real question is whether we can scale this up fast enough to matter.
That's the real test. Can the world turn a turning point into sustained progress?
Thanks for joining us as we broke down the facts behind the world's first projected emissions drop and historic ocean protection.
If you want to understand how close we really are to tackling climate change, keep following the data and the actions behind the promises.
Thank you for listening. This episode was powered by mynews.studio. Try now for free.